Denmark, a beautiful and varied country consisting of over 400 islands and 98 municipalities of exquisite coastlines and fertile rural farmlands. Yes, that's how I would have liked to have arrived in Copenhagen, on a boat like that. But like most Americans, I flew into Copenhagen, and I liked Copenhagen. Yes, Copenhagen is fantastic, but for some reason, most Americans who go to Denmark don't venture outside of Copenhagen and its immediate vicinity. So much so that when I was at the Museum of Copenhagen and enjoying their panorama of Copenhagen's town square, Guildhall, someone asked me, "So, are you going to see any of the rest of Denmark?" And I thought, rest of Denmark? What is this rest of Denmark? Where is this rest of Denmark? Is it on a map? Is it here? Or here? Or here? Or maybe it's here. Maybe it's here. No, that's Greenland, which is sort of part of Denmark, but I don't think it is the rest of Denmark. And then it struck me. What do the people who live in the rest of Denmark, wherever it is, think they live? I mean, do they think they live in the rest of Denmark? If you talk to someone in another city besides Copenhagen, you say, "Oh, where do you live?" And they go, "Oh, I live in the west. I live in the rest of Denmark." No, I think they think, those people who are outside of Copenhagen in this mythical rest of Denmark, think they live in the real Denmark. And I think they probably think that Copenhagen may actually be the rest of Denmark. Well, is Copenhagen the rest of Denmark? But unlike many Americans, I got a chance to see this mystical rest of Denmark. And the truth is, I found it quite magical. I went up to northern Jutland. I visited Saeby in the northern part of Jutland. I'm in the village, the town, the city of Saeby, and saw its Romanesque cathedral constructed in the 13th century, well before the Reformation, and with a Gothic tower added to it. I saw its harbor, newly renovated and protected by the Lady from the Sea. I saw its watermill. And I saw its mini Saeby. They actually have built and maintained a mini version of itself. See? There are little buildings that look just like the real ones. I also went to Aarhus. Aarhus dates back to at least the 8th century and is among the oldest cities in Denmark. They also have a great cathedral, like any other important town. Lots of interesting shops, neighborhoods, and restaurants. A premier modern art museum, Odense. And the Old Town, which is an open-air museum of historical buildings. They have a pre-20th century section, a section for the 1920s, and one dedicated to the 70s. There's a camera store, a hi-fi store, because we all want to relive the 70s. Come on, even if you weren't alive in the 70s, you still want to relive the 70s. And because we traveled around by train, we passed through a number of towns I want to see in the future. There was Svenstrup, Lenga, Fredericia, and of course there was Odense. Odense, which is the commercial and cultural hub of Funen, one of the larger islands of Denmark. It was in its cathedral where King Canute IV, generally considered to be the last Viking king, was murdered by unruly peasants who he was abusive to on the 10th of July, 1086. Then, in 1100, King Canute was canonized by the Catholic Church. It just goes to show you morality is a movable feast. And Odense is, of course, the birthplace of Hans Christian Andersen. You can go see the house he was born in, which is now his birthplace museum, and see the statue of him that had been half submerged in the harbor out of protest. Danes have a curious way of making a statement. And then, I'd like to see Aalborg. Well, I've been to Aalborg, but I haven't seen Aalborg.
Behind me is the town of Aalborg. We're not stopping here, but it's an interesting town. I'll give you a few facts while we're waiting for the car right there to pull out, and then we're on our way to Saeby. But Aalborg, I would have liked to visited Aalborg, but all I can say is I'm passing through. Maybe someday.
Aalborg is the big city in northern Jutland. After my brief visit to Aalborg, which was just passing through, as I told you, I did a little research. And geez, this place is fantastic! In addition to the medieval cathedral, it's a real old one, they have historical buildings, including Aalborghus Castle. They also have a 300-year-old pharmacy museum in a 17th century stone building. That's the great thing about Denmark. I've seen a lot of tremendous stuff in Denmark, but I know there's a lot more I can see. That's why I want to go to other places in this rest of Denmark. And I can't wait to go back. These places that dot the countryside are not the rest of Denmark. These places, these cities that dot the rest of Denmark, they're not the rest of Denmark. They are, along with Copenhagen, are the best of Denmark. And you should see as much of the best of Denmark as you can possibly see. Thank you, talk you kindly.